We've met in the last 3 months, once a month. I've covered different parts of a book that's put out by Unity, Metaphysics 1. It has 3 parts, but the third part was so chock full of information that I broke that up into 2 parts. So today we're going to talk about how we manifest the Christ consciousness in our lives, how we bring that into manifestation. And what we've done in the past, for those of you who are here for the first time or did not time it right to hear my other talks, we talked the first talk about what metaphysics is, which is looking at everything and everyone and all of the stories in the Bible as metaphors for the underlying concepts that are truth in the world. We talked about God, our concept of God, that God is principle, God is substance that underlies all reality. And we talked about the kingdom of God being the collection of divine ideas, that all divine ideas collected together become one collection that we call God. And we talked about how, as humans, we can draw from that source, draw from those divine ideas, and then manifest in the world through our consciousness those ideas. And that's the focus of what we are going to talk about today. So Christ consciousness, we learned in last month's talk, is a seed that's planted within each one of us. It's from our Creator. It's part of who we are. And so we germinate this seed by going to the silence, by entering into prayer and meditation over divine ideas. We reach up and grab onto a divine idea in our mind and hold it in our consciousness until it is so anchored in that we live it through our hearts and through our hands. And so today we're going to look at some other concepts that help us to understand how to bring those things into manifestation, how to bring them into our heart and through our hands. One of the concepts that Charles Fillmore talked quite a bit about was thoughts are things. Thoughts are, just like a chair or just like anything else. It's something that manifests in the world. And our thoughts, we get all kinds of thoughts, and we get to decide whether to invest in those thoughts or not invest in those thoughts. And so then the overall process of manifesting in the world is, what are we spending our energy on? What are we choosing to invest in with the thoughts that come to us? Which ones do we discard? Which ones do we hang on to? And so one of the things that Charles Fillmore talked about was that most of us don't really do our own thinking. Most of us take thoughts or ideas from our environment, from our experiences, and just replicate those over time. So what he said was, all thoughts that come to us do not belong to us. We may have taken hold of certain thoughts that came to us and are calling them our own. If they are negative, they will do us harm. But we can let go of these and further harm will cease. We can then attract new and better thoughts to us. But best of all, we can begin to do our own thinking. This is quite a high alignment, much rarer than we may realize. When we are really doing our own thinking, we receive much new inspiration and guidance because we are then generating energy that will let more light into our minds. So one of the key concepts that Charles Fillmore worked on was the idea that we don't have the ability to create or destroy as humans. But we do have a unique ability in our minds. And that unique ability is to consent or refuse. When we use our minds, we get to choose whether we consent to something or whether we refuse it. That's the power that we hold in our minds. And what we consent to ends up manifesting. What we refuse ends up just fading away. And so that's the key concept that we use when we start talking about denials and affirmations. And many of us in Unity circles know some about denials and affirmations. So I'll talk a little bit about it. There's quite a bit in this book about it, but I'll kind of hit some highlights. What I want to share with you, though, is from my perspective, our society has helped us to become experts at what we don't want. We get so much pushed toward us to buy, to do, to be. It's relentless. Everybody is trying to create some need in us that then they can sell us something to satisfy it. So we become experts at what we don't want. And that's fine, but that's not enough, because it's almost like a batter in a baseball game fouling off pitches until you get the one that you want, right? And we're so busy fouling off balls that we forget to look for the ones that we do want. So, from my opinion, we need to not only be able to discard the things we don't want, but we need to spend more energy focusing on what we do want. What do you want to become an expert of that you do want? How do you become an expert of what you want? So Charles Fillmore said it this way: there is a chain of mind action connecting cause and effect in the activities of life. This chain is forged by man, and its links are thoughts and words. So one of the tools that we have is denials. And denial is the ability to let go of the old, the outworn, the negative attitude, the incorrect belief. It is also the ability to refuse, to reject. It is the great nay, nay saying power of the mind. How this works for each of us in our minds is basically we're emptying the cup of our minds. We're pouring out all of the things that we don't want. We don't want hatred, we don't want judgment, we don't want dissension and violence. We're pouring all of that out of our minds with denials. And the simplest way that works, according to Charles Fillmore, is we don't feed them anymore. We discern an error thought and we say, I'm done with that thought. I'm putting that out of my mind. I'm no longer investing in that. And the change takes place is a transference of power from an error belief to faith in the truth through the recognition that God is good and is all that in reality exists. So when we focus our denials, he talks some about the fact that we don't focus on what already exists in the world and deny that. We focus on the ability or whether or not that thing in existence has any power over us. Whether it has any power at all. So let me give you a personal example. I have spent lots of time over my life running. I ran cross country in high school. I ran track in high school. And about 15 years ago, I picked up running again, and I couldn't breathe. I couldn't get from here to Carl's without stopping and just being totally out of breath. So I went to the doctor. She ran a bunch of tests. She sat me down. She knew who I was, and she said, "Well, you've got asthma." I'm like, "Oh, okay." She said, "Well, here's a prescription for Singular, and here's a prescription for an inhaler. Singular will help you, on a daily basis. Inhaler will help you with any attacks you have." I looked at her and I said, "What else you got? What other options for me today?" She's like, she laughed, said, "That's it. That's all I got. We ran the test. You've got a classic case of asthma." And so, I left, and I denied the power of that thought in my life. I said, "I don't have asthma." I refused to entertain that possibility. So I didn't even fill the prescription of Singular. I got the inhaler and I started running. And at the point where I was out of breath, I used the inhaler. And I started a running program and ran and ran and ran. And 3 weeks later, I just ran through my shortness of breath, and I haven't had shortness of breath since. So that's an example of not denying what's in existence at the moment, but denying the power it has to define your life, to move past that and to move through it. So affirmations are the other side of the coin. And affirmations are the ability to accept the newer, the truer, the higher, the more correct attitude or belief. It is also the ability to say yes and accept better concepts of divine ideas. It is the great yay, yay power of mind. So once we've emptied our cup with denials, then we've got an empty cup that we can fill up with affirmations. We can pour in those divine ideas and hold those in that container until they quench our thirst, until they become who we are. So affirmations work. One who knows principle has a certain inner security given him by the understanding of God mind. Our affirmations are for the purpose of establishing in our consciousness a broad understanding of the principles on which all life and existence depend. It's basically moving into an awareness of a divine idea, of a divine concept. So Charles Fillmore said, a lot of people spend way too much time on denials and talk way too much about affirmations. He said, just keep it simple. Use denials as if you're brushing away some cobwebs, and make your affirmations a strong, bold, vehement, positive attitude of mind. But then he said, don't spend a whole lot of words on it, because it's not the words that generate the power. It's the attitude of mind that generates more creative energy. So let's take an example of how this works. We all know that Tuesday, there was a man who got a truck and mowed down a bunch of people in New York City. That's a fact. We can't deny that happened, right? So most of us, or a lot of people, come up with an error thought about that. So the possible error thought, and there's lots of possibilities, is there are evil people in the world. That's actually a really common error thought in our world today, that there's a bunch of evil people that we've got to protect ourselves against. The possible denial for that is behaviors like that are based on the person's error thought. He's disconnected from source to be able to do something like that. So I'm not saying that there are evil people. I'm saying he was disconnected and he made that choice based on his error thought. And so then an affirmation could be, no thoughts or actions of another person can separate me from the love of God. So basically, you're pushing fear away and you're claiming your connection to source that is unalterable and unassailable by anything or anyone that lives in the world with you. So the next section of this book talks about faith. And faith is the perceiving power of the mind linked with a power to shape substance. It is a spiritual assurance, the power to do the seemingly impossible. It is a force that draws us to our heart's desire right out of the invisible spiritual substance. It is a deep inner knowing that which is sought is already ours for the taking, the assurance of things hoped for. So one of the things that this book does is make a distinction between blind faith and understanding faith. Blind faith is having faith without understanding the spiritual law behind why you're believing something. You just believe it. Understanding faith or thinking faith is the next is where you understand divine law and you bring that into your faith. So you've coupled your faith with your inspiration, and between the two of those, you can move mountains. We all have the thinking facility located in the head from which we send forth thoughts, good, bad, and indifferent. If we are educated and molded after the ordinary pattern of the human family, we may live an average lifetime and never have an original thought. The thinking faculty in the head is supplied with the second-hand ideas of our ancestors, the dominant beliefs of the race, or the threadbare stock of the ordinary social whirl. This is not faith thinking. Faith thinking is done only by one who has caught sight of the inner truths of being and who feeds his thinking faculty on images generated in the heart or love center. This is our individual work. We can't have, no one else can do it for us. It's our access to the divine through our hearts. So the end of this book talks about what some people in Unity refer to as the technicalities of metaphysical truth. And there's 4 statements which seem to parallel the statements at the beginning of my talk that were summary of the rest of the book. Statement number 1, God is principle, law, being, mind, spirit, all good, omniscient, omnipresent, omnipotent, unchangeable, creator, father, cause, and source of all that is. 2, God is individually formed in consciousness in each of us and is known to us as Father when we recognize him within us as our creator, as our mind, as our life, as our very being. This is that concept of surrender that is in today's daily word. 3, that mind has ideas and that ideas have expression. that all manifestation in our world is a result of the ideas that we are holding in mind and are expressing. And 4, that to bring forth or to manifest the harmony of divine mind or the kingdom of heaven, all our ideas must be one with divine ideas and must be expressed in the divine order of divine mind. So our role in co-creation, we don't create anything on our own. We create through the God principle that comes into the world through us. And the way we do that is through involution. Involution comes before evolution. If your mind is involved in something, you are in involution. You are involving your thought energy in what manifests in the world. Involution is the existence of everything in an invisible or potential form. Evolution is the process of the transformation from the invisible, intangible potential into expression and greater manifestation. So we have that power. We have the executive power. And we can use that power in a couple of ways. We can use it to bring the creative force of the universe into the world with original ideas, or we can use it as a copying machine and just keep replicating patterns and, repeated ideas over and over and over again. So one of the ways that we can bring this home and feel this in our body is to think about the fact that the Trinity is part of this process, that the Trinity is shown in the process of creation. In the back of the visible universe are both the original creative idea and the cosmic rays that crystallize into earthly things. And so I looked for a visual that would help us to be able to visualize this in a different way. And so what seemed to work for me is a prism. We are prisms in the world. And what we have is white light coming into us. It's relentless. It comes in whether we want it to or not. It comes through us. And how we refract that light into the world is our manifestation. So our job is to work on being the best prism we can be. God as principle is the light. We are the prism. Our manifestations are what shows up in the world. So the end of this book talks about, I added this one after I printed this, so this is my statement. We refract God's love through the prism of our consciousness. The end of the book talks about the 7 steps of creation, or the 7 days in Genesis. And when Charles Fillmore distilled it down to this, it makes an incredible amount of sense. The first step is the mind perceives and affirms truth to be a universal principle. The second step is faith in the working power of truth is born in consciousness. The third step, truth takes definite form in mind. That's that stillness where you meditate on what divine idea is. Fourth, the will, our will, carries truth into acts, into things we do, words we say, thoughts we have. Fifth, discrimination is quickened, and the difference between truth and error is discerned. We become better able to cast off those error thoughts and say, well, wait a minute, that's not truth. That isn't reality in the sense of principle. Six, every thought and word expressed in harmony with truth. That's where Jesus got. That's the place that he got to, where he understood his connection to source. And the seventh day represents a peaceful confidence and rest in the fulfillment of divine law. So you rest in the knowing that all of you has been transformed into an instrument of God. So that concludes Metaphysics 1 book. I've been honored to ask to come and speak some into 2018. I'll be doing the first of the month, except for January, do the second of the month. And we're going to take on Metaphysics 2, which is the second book in this series. And it has 3 sections. I'm not promising that we're going to get through those in 3 talks, but the 3 sections are illumination and guidance, healing, and prosperity. So we'll be looking at those starting in December, the first Sunday in December. So one of the reasons that I like to put the meditation after the talk is because I want to fill your mind with divine ideas and offer you a particular one today. You're welcome to use the one that I'm going to put on the screen, or think of your own divine idea as we meditate. And last month, I talked a little bit more about meditation and about prayer, and how meditation and prayer is moving into the silence, moving into that place where our thoughts become consumed by a particular divine idea. And that's what I'd invite you to do today with our meditation. So the statement of truth that I'm offering you to use as a guide, if you'd like one, is, in this now moment, I am eternally connected to the source of my being. That is an absolute truth. We are never disconnected from our source. So if you'd like to turn down the lights now. I'd invite you to get comfortable in your seats. Maybe set down anything you're holding so that you can focus on your thoughts. Either close your eyes or soften your gaze. Soften your gaze is to just find a focal point across the room and then allow your peripheral vision to come to the forefront so that you're not focusing on any one thing. Take a moment and take a cleansing breath, breathing down deep into your belly. As you allow your belly to expand, you stimulate the vagus nerve, which is responsible for our relaxation response. And as your body quiets, I'd invite you to allow your emotional energy body to quiet. as your emotional energy body and physical body quiet, I invite you to ask your intellectual body, your mind, to quiet. Putting any thoughts on pause, knowing that you can pick them up later. And now with your intellectual body, your emotional body, and your physical body in that place of stillness, I'd invite your spirit to choose a divine idea. Perhaps it is, in this now moment, I am eternally connected to the source of my being. I'll say it 2 more times and then enter into the silence. In this now moment, I am eternally connected to the source of my being. In this now moment, I am eternally connected to the source of my being. And as we conclude this time of meditation and prayer, I invite you to bring that divine idea into your heart, into your mind, into your emotions, into your body, manifesting the love that God is and that each of us are.